Welcome, everybody, to Mom Street USA. My name is Kate, and this is my beautiful co host, Jackie, aka Wishes Mama. And we are here to help build a community of moms and parents that want to have more magical vacations for your families. So, this is a show for you, about you, with you, and we are here with you today. And Jackie, I think we're going to just kick it off with some little introductions. I know a lot of you know us already, but maybe you don't know that much about us. So we thought we'd share a little bit about our families and ourselves and who we are. And I thought, Jackie, would you mind going first?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys all so much for joining us tonight. This has been a work in progress for several weeks, and we're super excited. We're glad that you guys are here and that you guys are excited, and it feels really good. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jackie. I live in the lovely state of Ohio. I have been a Disney fan, oh gosh, for years and years and years, for as long as I can remember. My love for Disney really kind of grew when I was in college. I met a really good group of people who also loved Disney, and we would do Disney movie nights and things like that. And that really sparked my interest. After college, one of my best friends was a cast member, so I was fortunate enough from about 2012 to about 2016, I went to Disney like 7 times. And so that really kind of sparked my love for the parks and all things there. And having her as a cast member was super helpful just to give me the inside look at different things. So that's kind of my parks history. I am a mom to 2 kiddos. So I have a newly 6-year-old and an almost 4-year-old. A boy and a girl, and also two doggos that call me mom too.
I love that.
Yeah, and they have, not surprisingly, inherited my love for all things Disney. So it's something that we really enjoy together. We watch movies, and just tonight before bedtime, we were watching Ride Point of View videos because that's what they requested before we went to bed tonight. So definitely,
Love that.
definitely, the Disney runs in the family for sure. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. And kind of as we
you are married too, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I have a husband. He's not the important one
Surrounded.
in this. No, I'm totally kidding. Yes. My husband, Andrew, and I have been married. Oh, gosh. What year is it? For 8 years. And yeah, he begrudgingly went along with me to Disney for several trips. And now he loves it just as much as I do and enjoys going and knows the parks as well as I do for the most part. So yeah, it's really kind of a whole family thing.
I love that. I love that you converted him. That's the best.
It was fairly easy. I mean, he also started with that same group of people because my husband and I met in college. So he kind of started in that same group of people as I did, and so it was pretty easy.
I love that. That's so great. And what parks do you go to, and how often do you go?
Yeah, so we visit Walt Disney World. We have not been to Disneyland yet, but it's eventually we'll get there. I have been to Disney World about, I think when I last counted, 14 times
Wow.
in my lifetime. Most recently in April, and then we are gearing up for a trip in October. So we will be going, my family and also my in-laws will be traveling with us in October. So we're super excited. My mother-in-law has been before, but my father-in-law has not. So it will be a very exciting trip for us for that. So we try to go once a year. We get lucky occasionally and can go twice a year.
Yeah, that's so great. I love that.
Yeah.
So I guess I should share a little bit about me. I don't know who needs to know about me, but
all of us, Kate, all of us.
I know. So I started going to Disney. I think my smallest pictures of me was when I was like 2. If you see that silhouette that's up there on my ceiling, that's me when I went to Disneyland, and they did my silhouette when I was like at least like 2, probably.
That's amazing.
2. Yeah, so it's like I have very short hair because of that. And I think I have my mom over here. Oh, I do. I can show you my mom. She's like, this one was my mom.
Oh, how
Maybe
sweet.
looks like me now. um, so I started to go to Disneyland from a very young age, and my dad took me a couple times when I was a kid, and then I didn't get to Disney World until I was in college. I did like an epic road trip from Baltimore, where I went to school. I grew up in Oregon, and I'm currently in Oregon, but I went to Baltimore for school, and I drove all the way down the coast and like a nonstop drive for spring break, and I was hooked on Disney World too after that. Um, and then my love of, I've just studied Disney history. I would seek out really random facts from Disney history and behind the scenes stuff anywhere I could find it, and started reading all the books. And everybody always asks me, like, how do you know all this stuff about Disney? I'm like, I've just read for a really long time and I'm old. So that's how I know. But um, when my husband and I we moved to Ireland for his master's degree, we then lived close to Disneyland Paris. So we popped over there for Christmas, for our very first Christmas while we were married, which was pretty
Wow.
amazing.
Wow, that's so
Seeing
cool.
it, they made it like snow on Main Street there in Paris, which was so cool. And um, so we got to go to Disneyland Paris, and then I've been on a couple Disney cruises, from one from Miami, and then I went on one to Alaska, and I just booked one for Europe for next year.
Oh, that's
So I'm
so
doing,
exciting.
I know, I'm doing a Northern Europe one with my mother-in-law and my family, and I'm super excited. And the kids
Oh,
don't
wow.
know, so it's a secret. Don't tell
Oh,
my kids,
okay.
but
I won't.
yeah. So that was kind of my Disney background. I've also been married to my husband 16 years, and I've known him for 18. So we've been together a really long time. And I have three kids. They are getting a little older now. My oldest, my son, is 12. I have a daughter who's 9, almost 10, and I have a daughter who's 7. So, which I love that, you've got the kids that are still a little bit in the younger zone, like those baby years are not that far behind you. They're a little behind you, but not that far behind. And
Right.
I'm like trying to remember the last time I changed a diaper. It's been a long time. So, which I'm very grateful about. Yeah. So, yeah, so that's a little bit about me. Yes, and I do live in Oregon. So we do get that perspective, I think, for both of us, of getting to travel to the parks and what that's like. And I have honestly lost count of how many times I've been to Disneyland and Disney World. It's
Yeah.
a lot.
Well, and as a
Many,
pass
many times.
holder, you go more frequently than typically someone who
I
is
do.
not a pass holder. So
Yeah.
that you've got that going for you. Yeah, I only thought about it, like it was one of those things like during the middle of the pandemic when we were like home. So our trip, we were supposed to take a trip during the pandemic, and we kept having to push it out, push it out, push it out. So then it was just one of those moments where I was like, how many times have I been? And so I literally have a note
Yeah.
on my phone that has like all the dates of all the trips that I've
Oh,
taken. And
I
like I
love
have like
that.
when it was my oldest's first trip and then my youngest first trip and all that. So it's fun.
I definitely have a scrapbook from my oldest going for his first trip, and I
Yeah.
have a photo album from my second, and my third, I think I gave up. And I feel really bad about it. I should really make one.
I mean,
But I think moms of three or more than one know they get
yeah.
it. So
And I'm sure you've got the photos somewhere on a phone or on
oh,
a
I took
hard
photos.
drive or wherever they
They're
may be.
around.
So it's there. It's there.
Oh yes, it's the mom life. Like it's I always that mom guilt will get you every time. So
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. I've been talking about the possibility of going on a solo trip at some point because I've never been solo. I've always gone with either my best friend or my husband or kids or whoever. And so we were talking about doing a solo trip, and I'm like, I don't know that I could handle the mom guilt because my kids love
oh
it so much. I was like, I don't know
oh
if I could do it. I probably could, let's be real. But like, I don't, it
yeah.
would be so hard.
The trick is to normalize it for your kids. Like my
Yeah.
kids think it's normal for moms to go to Disney without them. So they don't know any other way unless their friends tell them. But they're like, yeah, my mom just goes sometimes with us. It's great.
It's fine. It's totally good.
Yeah, no, you should not. Kirk saying no, just go, Jackie. I'm like, yeah, just go,
I
just do
know.
it, and then you can meet up with like it's funny because I was just thinking that you and I have never met face to face, like,
Right.
but we've talked and things, and I'm like, I feel like I know you, but we've never
Yeah.
literally never
Right.
met
How
face to
funny is
face.
that? The internet is a wild place. A
It is.
wild place.
It really is. So much of this pocket fam I haven't met face to face, but
I
so
know.
what could you tell me one of your most favorable moments for a family moment in the parks?
So I have been thinking about this because, as no surprise to anyone listening, Kate and I are like mega planners. So we have like a whole plan for everything that we're going to talk about from now until like Christmas. So it's good. So I've been thinking about this and it's so hard to pick. But I came up with a couple and I've got some photos that I want to share because I think they're just too precious to not. So my son's first trip was a huge just family moment, you know. So his first trip was June of 2018. He was not quite 2 yet, so he was like going to be turning 2 that August. And we wanted to go. I was actually very pregnant with my daughter when we went.
Oh,
so I
no.
was like 7 months pregnant.
Oh, gosh.
When we went in the middle of June, which
Oh,
was
no.
not a great idea. And I had done this once before because I went when I
Gosh.
was pregnant with my son, which was also not a great experience. But, you know, the things we do to get that Disney fix in.
That's right.
So he, before going, did not enjoy costumed characters. So we would go to like sporting events and stuff, and any of the mascots, he wanted absolutely nothing to do with them. And so we were like, oh, this is going to be really, really interesting because he also has been a massive Mickey fan ever since he was like 6 months old. When you first introduce your kids to, you know, screen time and things like that and shows, Mickey Mouse Clubhouse was literally the only thing that he would watch for months and months and months of his life.
Yeah, my son
So we're
too.
like, we know how much he loves Mickey. So he first met Mickey. Actually, we did a character breakfast at Chef Mickey's because we're like, well, maybe that'll be a little bit better. Like he can be distracted if he's eating, and it won't be such a like pressure situation for him. Like if he doesn't want to. So Mickey came up to our table. Let me get this. Oh, geez, I'm like knocking things over. And my son is sitting on my husband's lap, and just the look of joy in that little face.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Was just like one of those moments where I was like, okay, we're good. He's in. And I have a whole section of pictures on my camera from that experience where he was just like, he loved it. He absolutely loved it. And now it's gotten to the point where like this last trip, we were getting close to the end of our Magic Kingdom day. And he was like, Mom, we haven't seen Mickey yet. I saw him in the parade, but we have to go see him. He's up by the train station. You know where he is. We have to go see him. I was like, yes, we will go. We will go see him.
That's when you just like pop over to Epcot because you know you can go near Figment and there's like no wait there.
I
ever
know.
to see
And
Mickey.
it was one of those things where like this last trip was such a whirlwind that it was just like, yeah, we'll figure it out as we go.
We'll make it happen.
Yeah. So that was a very, very cute moment. Also on that same trip, there were several times where like we went with a couple friends. And so there were several times because I was pregnant, like I told my husband, go ride stuff. I'm just going to like wander around Main Street and like hang out with my kiddo in the stroller and just like take it all in. And we happened to catch Snow White as she was coming out for her set on that trip. And my kiddo, I just like got him out of the stroller and he just like, she took him by the hand and just walked him back. She was meeting like by like the town hall area, that little courtyard back there. And she just took him on back there and just like got down with him and started chatting with him and talking to him. And it was just so super sweet. And then there's one, I got to find the other picture. Where did it go?
Oh my gosh, that's adorable.
Oh, technology.
Only one photo. Now I feel underprepared.
I'm
Like,
sorry. I was going through I was going through all my photos and I was like, oh, this one's cute. Oh, I like this one. Oh, this one too. So he her mark on him was she left a lovely kiss mark on his forehead.
Oh, you're like, we're never washing this forehead.
Yeah, literally. And he of course had no
That's so
idea. He was
sweet.
like, what's going on? But it was just a very cute moment, more for me than for him. Because I was more aware, you know, at that age we had watched a couple princess movies but not a ton. So for me as like mom, having that experience was super fun.
That is so sweet. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, those are so great. Those
Yeah.
are great stories. I have, let's see, I couldn't pick just one story either. I feel like as moms, it's like, how do we pick just one? Especially
Right.
when you have multiple kids. I'm like, I don't even know. I have so many. I actually, this isn't my stories, but I told my husband, I was like, I want to do a solo trip, just one solo trip with each of my kids in the parks so that I have these memories of just them going with mom to the parks. And we finally finished our last one this year because I did my first two kids and then COVID hit and then we couldn't do anything. So I finally got, so I have these really sweet memories of going with each of my kids just on a solo mom trip, which I
That's
highly
awesome.
recommend to anyone. Maybe you pick a special birthday, age 10 or something, you know, that's like, we're going to do this for our kids if you can. It's hard to afford it. So I totally get that. But those are really special memories to me. But I remember when my son, my oldest, was, he had to have been like 18 months, maybe a little bit younger. He was very small.
Mm-hmm.
No, it was younger than that because he was learning to walk and go upstairs for the first time. So we spent
Wow.
like our whole trip looking for stairs to climb. So we did
Oh.
like Tarzan's treehouse because it was a Disneyland,
Yeah.
and we did all those stairs that went up before you go over the bridge, which is now gone. Like they just tore it out. But and then we did Mickey's house, and he walked up the stairs into Mickey's house and then back
Oh.
down, and then up and then back down, and we did that for like a half hour. But and then at the end of the day, because he had climbed all these stairs, we I don't remember which fireworks show it was, but we were watching the fireworks, and I had him in like the ergo carrier,
Mm-hmm.
and so he was like right here, and he was so tired. And he was just like completely passed out, and I'm holding him here, and then like it's Dumbo's baby mine is in the fireworks show, and
Oh.
I just bawled, just tears. And I was
Oh.
like, I knew that was like core memory. Like, I am never
Yeah.
going to forget this moment with my little guy after this day that was nothing like I had planned because it never is with kids, you know, but it was such a sweet moment. And then, of course, I've got to tell a story that also includes my two girls because I got three kids. So,
Yeah.
one of my other most meaningful days, it was like the perfect magical morning at Disneyland. Was we went and we did the like mini like character breakfast at Plaza. They have a character breakfast, or at least they used to. I think they brought it back. But anyway, they have like the most random characters at this breakfast, like the really obscure, and it's a bizarre mix usually of like rare characters, like the fairy godmother, and then they had Captain Hook. And my son was dressed as Peter Pan that day, so he got to meet Captain Hook, and they took pictures together and things. And then after we had breakfast, we walked over, and while we were going to Pixie Hollow, we ran into Peter Pan, which is my photo. So this was quite a few years ago now, so my kids are older, but this is my kids. I made them
Oh.
costumes for this one, the older two.
Oh my word.
And so we ran into Peter Pan, and he of course talked to my kids for a really long time. There's literally
Yeah.
nobody else around because it was super early. And
Oh,
then we went
how
to
sweet.
we I know we went to go meet Tinkerbell, and then we went to go ride Peter Pan. We're like, let's just like make the morning complete, right? We're dressed
Yeah.
up and things. And so
Right.
so we went to get in line for Peter Pan, and of course, the line for Peter Pan at that point in the morning and virtually all day is at least 45-minute wait. It just is. It's just always long.
Yeah.
So, but a cast member saw us getting in the back of the line, and they pulled us out, and I was like, oh my gosh, are we in trouble? Like, did my kids do something, right? Like, I'm
Right.
panicking. And they're just
Right.
like, well, Peter Pan should not wait in line for his own ride.
Oh.
And so they took us in the back entrance, and they let us like get on and without a wait, and we rode
Oh,
Peter
how
Pan without a
sweet.
wait in their little outfits. And I was like, this is the most magical morning ever. I
Absolutely.
couldn't recreate it if I tried. Like it was all
Yeah.
happenstance that Peter happened to be walking by, and that cast member chose to give us that wonderful pixie dust,
Yeah.
and you know, which I would never ask for. Like it was just really
Right.
sweet.
Right.
So
Very authentic.
yeah, yeah. So I think we all got our meaningful, magical stories, but those are some of mine.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I love it. Well, and I will say, I also have magical moments with my daughter. I know I told two stories about my son. My daughter's first trip was just such a unique experience because it was our trip during the well, I don't even want to say the end of the pandemic, but during the pandemic.
Sure.
So we had planned to go initially November of 2020. And then it was one of those things where we were like, we're really not comfortable going November of 2020. So then we pushed it back and pushed it back and pushed it back. So we ended up going in April of 2021. And that was my daughter's first trip. When we went, masks were still required. They had just lifted the mandate to where we could stand still and take photos without masks on. So we were able to get like pictures of them on Main Street and all that kind of stuff without the masks on. But all of our ride photos have masks on. It's a very just unique thing. But it was also one of the best trips my husband and I have ever been on, because we planned 2 days in Magic Kingdom and we did everything 3 times.
Wow. Yeah, because there's like no crowds back then. Yeah.
Yeah, they were still at like the 35%, whatever they were, capacity. And so we literally waited on nothing. Literally the second morning that we had at Magic Kingdom, we rope dropped the carousel because that was the request of my daughter. She loves the carousel, to the point where this last trip, so her second trip, she literally cried all morning in Fantasyland because we kept walking past the carousel. And, and it was like, oh, okay, I promise we'll get to it. We'll get to it. But we literally, we stood in line so that way she could be the first one on the carousel, and she was the first one on the carousel. And not only that, but at that time they had the rows of the carousel like numbered for social distancing. And so they were assigning like one party per row. And the row that we got had Cinderella's horse on it. So she got to ride Cinderella's horse, and she got to be the first one on the carousel. And it was just such a cute thing. And that's just her to a T. She's very opinionated and very quirky about what she loves. And it's one of those things where, like, if you don't do what she asks you to do, she's going to let you know she's not happy about it.
She'd get along well with my youngest daughter. She's the same way.
Yeah.
Maybe so they wouldn't.
So this is one of the pictures of her from her first trip.
Aww.
On Main Street.
Cutie.
Yeah, so you can see there's definitely still people around. But yeah, all of our photos have, the pictures that we have like on Main Street and stuff have people with masks on in the background and everything. So it's just such an interesting, difference between their first trips. We still had a very magical time, obviously. I mean, very rarely do you go to the parks and not have a magical time unless something completely drastic happens. But it was just a very different kind of a trip for sure on her first trip.
Yeah, she'll remember it. It's a memorable one.
Right, for sure. She'll look back at the pictures and go, wait a minute. What's going on here? Well, you see, here's what happened.
I feel like she was someone who would really love Storybook Lane canal boats in Disneyland. Mm-hmm. And if you do that and you rope drop it, you get to sign like the captain's log if you're the first person of the day. So I feel like when you go to Disneyland, maybe try to rope drop Storybook Lane canal boats.
I will keep that in mind. We are currently looking ahead years and years to like 2028, hopefully coming out to the West Coast. We don't love flying, so I kind of want to wait until my kiddos, I feel like, are going to be old enough to handle possibly either one very long flight, very long to them, but not quite so bad, or 2 flights. So it's just navigating airports is a whole thing, and we will talk about that in future episodes.
We will. Yes, we have it planned out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but there's definitely, I mean, everybody's got their different comfort levels with flying too, It's like, and it's crazy right now for flying. I don't really recommend anybody fly right now. It's horrible.
Right.
So,
well, and living in Ohio, we don't even fly. When we go to Florida, we drive. So a lot of people think we're crazy, but that's our preference. We like to stay on the ground.
Yeah. Well, we just drove down to California, but we did it with going down to the Grand Canyon first and did a giant loop. Yeah. It was 3,000 miles of driving. Wow. I don't know if I'd do it again. Wow. It was 2 weeks that we were gone. Yeah. And it was a lot, but it was great. And I saw so many things that I actually see in the parks too. So I was like, we saw the Grand Canyon, and then we saw the Grand Canyon diorama on the train. And the kids were like, Mom, that doesn't look like the Grand Canyon. I was like, I know, honey. The
Right. You're
Disney
like,
Grand
yep,
Canyon.
yep. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. You have the proof.
Oh gosh. Well, so we transition then since you guys got to know us a little bit, and we will take some Q&A at the end of this show. We would love to hear if you guys have any questions for us. But we wanted to give you something this very first show, not just hearing from us, but also to just maybe talk about something that might help you in the parks as well. So we were going to just talk a little bit about how different ages of kids maybe experience different rides, and how maybe to help them feel less anxious if they are, or what to do if your kid does not want to go on a ride, because that happens a lot
Yeah.
sometimes.
Right. Or they're ready to go all the way up until you're at the front, and then they're like, no, I changed
And they
my
panic.
mind. Yes.
Yes. Or they
Yes.
have to go to the bathroom right as you're about to get on, which happens so often.
Yep.
Even if you prepare ahead of time.
Right.
That happened to
Right.
me. My son, we were about to get on Splash Mountain for the first time, and I think he was 4, and he was definitely within the height requirement, but
Yeah.
he had to go to the bathroom right as we were about to load, and I was like, "What?" So we had to like go all the way out the exit and find a
Oh,
bathroom, and luckily
no.
they let us come back in the exit. But I was like,
Okay.
"Really?"
Right. Like, come on, we planned for this.
Oh
Yeah.
my
So
goodness.
one of
So
the great things
go
that
ahead.
the Disney parks offer, in instances where you're not sure about waiting in line with your kiddo, is the child swap program. So that is something we just wanted to touch on, and it's something that we'll continue to talk about kind of throughout future shows and things like that. But basically, when you've got kiddos who are too short to ride or don't want to ride, you have the ability to do what is a child swap. So here's a little nugget of information for those of you who maybe don't know. Basically, all you do is go up to the cast member at the front of the queue area and just let them know you want to do a child swap. Have your magic band or your ticket or whatever you're using for your entry that day ready, because they will scan whoever's going to wait out. But basically, it allows for part of your party or one adult or however you choose to divide it to wait in the queue, while the others do not have to wait in the queue. So they can go do another attraction, they can go grab a snack, they can just chill out and wait, not being confined to that queue line. And while that first person goes in, they then get to experience the ride. They come out and you literally do a child swap. So the child swaps to the other parent or the other group. And then you get to go back in through the lightning lane line. So you don't have to wait again in that same queue over and over again. So that is something that is super helpful, especially for kids with tiny bladders, or kids who are maybe not so sure about the ride that you're getting ready to experience.
Yeah, I just used it for the Incredicoaster in California Adventure on this past trip with my kids, because my girls were like not having it. I think my youngest is not even tall enough for it, because it's a roller coaster. For those of you who don't know California very well, it's one that goes upside down, and it's very fast. So just the upside down loop is enough to say kids like, I ain't doing that, like, no thank you. So
Right.
I was like, I was not going to force them to do that. I wouldn't do that. So we already had lightning lanes for it. So what we did is we went to the lightning lane cast member, and so you can still use your lightning lane and also still do child swap as well. So that you can, like, my son got to ride twice. He rode once with me, and then they give you usually a companion to go with you. So it's you and a companion, and then you can go through. And they just scan in Disneyland. They just scanned our park tickets for it. I imagine it's Magic Bands, I think, in Disney World, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I do recommend that if you're doing Lightning Lane, I know a lot of people say, well, if you do the Lightning Lane, you don't necessarily have to do child swap. I do recommend you do it because it gives you more flexibility for your return time. We've experienced and seen on the lives that most cast members are flexible if you're outside of your window of time that you return. That's not always gonna be a guarantee. So you want to make sure that even if you're using Lightning Lanes and everyone has a Lightning Lane, that you still have them scan you for child swap, because it gives you that bigger window. I believe, and if someone in the chat knows different, you can correct me, but I believe you can only hold one child swap pass on your account at a time. but you can hold it for any time throughout the day. So let's say you're trying to you're riding that ride in the morning, but something happens before your second group gets to go on, then you have the ability to return, later in the day if needed, or if it starts to storm, or whatever may happen. It just gives you more flexibility for that. So I would recommend that you do the child swap, even if you do have a lightning lane time for it.
Yeah, and they used to have paper passes for it that said rider swap on it. I think they were red in some places, but sometimes they change per ride what they were, but now it seems to be, it's all digital.
Yeah.
So,
I think once everything went to the digital fast pass system, they were trying to cut down on all of their paper passes, which makes sense because, eco-friendly and also easier for them to track probably in their system how many passes and what kind of passes they're dishing out.
yeah, and I have noticed that there are some cast members in some rides that you have to have your small child or child with you in order to ask for it, because there's some people that have abused the system. So make sure that your child is with you that is not going on the ride, and just so they can see, like, I'm a parent, I have my child, and then it just makes everything go much faster because they don't have to guess or wonder if you actually have a child. So.
Absolutely. And the nice thing about Disney is that they're so accommodating for kids. If they can tell, your kid is not having it or something goes wrong, most of the time they're going to, be extremely helpful. And like you said, let you come back in the exit on Splash Mountain after you waited in that line for that long. One of the things that we did with our kiddos, going when we went back in 2021, so my daughter's first trip, was we requested the cast members at Haunted Mansion if we could skip the stretching room, because we thought that experience was going to be too much for our kids at that age and at that moment. So they were very much like, oh yeah, no problem, and they just took us back through, from the main entryway. They took us out and around, and we joined with the crew right before you get on the dune buggies, and my kids were perfectly fine with it. And then this next trip, they were perfectly fine with the stretching room. It was just one of those moments where we were like, I don't know that they're gonna do so well with that.
Yeah, especially when everybody screams in the room. It can be very intimidating for kids.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And I'm like, it's intense.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like it's literally somebody hanging from the ceiling. It's an intense scene. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So in instances like that, it's always helpful to just ask the cast member. They're going to know what's possible and what's not. They're going to know what areas they're allowed to take you in and around. So that way they have the ability to help you out with that. And we didn't even know if they were going to let us skip the stretching room. We just went and asked, like, hey, is this possible? And they were like, oh yeah, absolutely, no problem. So we're like, okay, that's good to know.
When you skip the stretching room, Lem's asking, where did you go through? Where did they take you?
I don't remember because it was a blur, but I know we came out. So after you leave the stretching room and you go into that next, it's not really a hallway, but it's like the hallway that leads you to that little wraparound queue before you actually load the dune buggy. On the wall on the left, there's a door right there. Okay. And that's the door we came out of to join back with the people who had done the stretching room, if that makes sense to those of you who know that space in the Haunted Mansion.
Yeah, you basically just bypassed it. Yeah.
So I don't know where the door,
elevator.
And I don't know where the door was that we went into, but I know we came out that door. I don't remember. I'd have to go back and look through and see, because I feel
next time you're gonna be staring at doors when you go to the Haunted Mansion.
Well, and I don't remember if we went into the building and then through a door, or if they took us out of the queue through there. You know what I mean? I don't remember how we got in there.
Kirk says it's the next door on the left past the servants' quarters if you walked up the exit.
Oh, and that might have been what we did.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and so talking about skipping areas, I know that there's a lot of people with a DAS pass or whatnot, and when I went on Cosmic Rewind, someone in the chat was saying this is a really long time to wait for someone with a DAS pass, because I was traveling with someone who has a DAS pass, and we waited a very long time in all of those kind of pre-show queues. But there, like we could have, if we needed to, asked a cast member if there was a way to skip those and let them know about the DAS. So if you have a child that just cannot do that, is got their own sensory issues or whatever, that's like it's overwhelming for them, you can always ask a cast member if there's an alternative for skipping the queue area, the pre-show area, because a lot of the time there is, just like
Yeah,
the Haunted Mansion.
absolutely. And Kate, since you've got a little bit of experience, can you explain what the DAS pass is for anyone who maybe isn't familiar with that term?
Yeah, I'm definitely not an expert in the DAS pass because I don't have one myself. But I will say, it's a disability access services, I think is what it stands for,
That sounds
right?
right.
Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but and it is for people who are have. It's usually not for physical things. Like if you can be in a wheelchair or like an ECV, usually they still have you wait in a specific line. Sometimes it's in the exit and whatnot. It's for people that have maybe like challenges mentally, emotionally, waiting in line for a really long time. And so they can apply for something called the DAS Pass. And it works very similarly to Lightning Lanes, but it's its own separate system where you have to talk to guest experiences. And sometimes you can book them in advance for Disney World. I know you can book, I think, 3 per day, like the old Fast Pass program. You could book 3 per day in advance for a specific day, and then you can still get more the day of, I think, after you use those. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's how it works. And then you can take up to 10 people with you using your DAS Pass. So we've done that with my friend before, and it's really helpful. You go in the Lightning Lane when you use it, and they scan you in just like you do with a Lightning Lane. But it's a very helpful service for those who have maybe kiddos or even yourself that is really struggles with something that you really can't wait in those lines. So, and
Yeah,
there's lots of
absolutely.
people that go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. No, you go.
As I
No,
say,
you
I've
go.
got some people chiming in here in my chat saying that it looks like it's 2 in advance per
2 in
day that
advance.
you can
Okay.
book ahead.
Thank you. I knew it
Yeah,
was 2 or 3. So thank you
yeah,
for that.
yeah,
That's why I said I'm not a DAS expert. I've just been
yeah.
around a couple of people that use them. So, but yes, that is definitely a very helpful service, and there's way more information online about that. Do some Google searches about that because I wish I was an expert in it, but I'm not. So I don't want to lead anybody astray.
Yeah, and I've got Holly in here is saying it's also great for people with chronic illnesses that cause inflammation, fatigue, those types of things. Yeah, there's a whole
There's a
list
list.
of reasons why. And basically, when I know at Disney World, and I'm not super familiar again at Disneyland or kind of across the board, but I know that you can talk to someone and get it set up ahead of time before your trip. It used to be that you had to go and see them like day of, but I know you can set it up ahead of time now, and do like a video call with them to get it all like approved and set up on your account and things like that. So I know that's been super helpful for a lot of people who maybe have anxiety about it. You have that ability to set it up. I think it's either 30 or 60 days in advance. It's kind of in that window of things. Oh, Jazzy is saying she thinks Walt Disney World is up to 6 people per DAS pass. So
Yeah,
we will.
I was at Disney World and they did let us do 10, but that might have been a really nice cast member. So
Yeah, right.
don't
Yeah,
quote me on that. I'd say probably 6 is probably more likely than 10. So,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, for sure. And that's something that, Kate and I are not experts on because we don't use, but there are lots of people out there that are willing to help with that. We are a part of the Walrus Carp Pocket Fam Discord, and I know there's channels on there that people are totally willing to help with that. So if you're not on that, you can find that link in our bios, and they will be able to help you out if you've got DAS specific questions. And that's something that we'll probably have to look into for future shows. That way we've got some more information for you guys on that when we kind of talk about lightning lanes and DAS and all that kind of stuff, because that is coming eventually down the road in our
yeah,
shows.
I think we should definitely have a guest at some point that is a DAS user, and that we can get some information right from the source of someone who uses it often. I think that would be good.
Absolutely. And if Lemuel is still here, perhaps his lovely wife Ashley would be willing to help us out with that, because she I know has utilized and also works in that field for Disney. So perhaps we could get some insight from her on that as well.
And she can talk about service animals too. So that would be great.
We would love that. So Lemuel. Just going to throw that out there while you're in here.
So we've talked about, we kind of touched on a little bit, like if kids have maybe anxieties about going on rides for the child swap. What are maybe some other ways that you help your kids feel less anxious about going on rides or maybe get excited about them?
Absolutely. I think it's super important, in my opinion, to prep your kids before you go. That is something that I really try to do just because my kids thrive in experiences when they know what to expect. They like to help planning. They like knowing what we're going to do and what it's going to be like. So just talking to them about, okay, we're going to be going here. This is what we're going to be doing, that type of thing. But we also made it a habit to watch YouTube point of view videos. So we would go on YouTube and anything, it started off initially with anything that I thought that they were going to be maybe a little bit apprehensive about. We pulled up a video and we would just sit and watch it and talk about it and answer questions that they had, different things like that. We initially started it out as because we had to practice my kiddos wearing masks for our pandemic trip. So we would make them wear their masks during our practice. But it really blossomed into, they just love watching these videos now. Like they asked to before bed, and I'd like, it used to be me prompting them like, hey, do you guys want to watch Disney World stuff? But now it's just turned into, they'll just ask me to pull up stuff on YouTube to watch. So that was so helpful because my kids knew exactly what was going to happen in what part and what to expect. And that, especially for my son, who can get a little bit sensory overload sometimes when we're in the parks and on rides, that was enormously helpful for him.
Yeah, that's great. And that's exactly what I did when my kids were really little and they hadn't had any park experience. We did the exact same thing. We would watch the point of view ones. And, it also gave me a gauge of what they might be nervous to try. And so, you know your kids more than anybody else, and you can trust your mom instincts about like whether or not you need to like encourage them to maybe take a little step towards bravery, or if you just need to really respect their space and be like, they're not doing this now and I'm not going to force them. So, and every kid's different and every, way they relate to the park is different. So, we would I would never say there's a specific age for anyone. There's obviously height requirements for certain rides, but I mean, even my kids, none of my kids will go on Tower of Terror / Guardians, depending on what park you're in. They will not. I think I took my son on it when he was like 4 and had reached the height requirement, and I think it traumatized him.
Oh,
So
no.
I learned not to do that. And I was like, so now, we talk a lot about if there are drops is always the question my girls have. Are there drops? Mm-hmm. Sometimes we talk about they don't like pirates because there's a drop. And I'm like, it's not a drop, it's a slide. Let me go on pirates.
Right.
In Disneyland, there's a lot more intense. There's 2 of them, and they're way more intense. Like my husband's hat flew off when he went down, and there was a big splash, like Splash Mountain. It was crazy, but I think, anticipating like there's this many drops, there's this many lift hills, there's this many, like it goes this fast or it feels like this, kind of, I agree, talking all of that out can really help a lot of anxiety. And with my kids, especially now that they're older, I wouldn't do this necessarily when they were younger, but now that my kids are older, I often encourage them and I say, I would love for you to try it once, just once. And if you hate it, you don't ever have to ride it again. And, more often than not, they love it after they've ridden it and realize it wasn't that scary. Because a lot of the Disney rides really aren't that intense. There's a couple of them that are, but the majority really aren't. They're not built to be super intense. And they really do take your attention away from the intense things to just fun stuff and gags. That's how the Disney rides are designed. They're designed, a lot of them have funny things in them, right? So
Right.
I think that has really helped them conquer their fear, because as they grow, they're like, well, I was scared about it last time, but now I'm not, and like they feel like the self-confidence, you see them just grow, like, I'm big enough to do this now, and I loved it. And that happened with my daughter with Big Thunder Mountain Railroad this year. She hated it until this year. Now she cannot get enough. She loves it. So,
Oh, that's so cute. Yeah, we had a little bit of that with my daughter on this last trip. She was just tall enough to do Seven Dwarfs, Mine Train, and to do Slinky Dog. Like literally to the point where every cast member we passed, can I measure her? Can I measure her? Which I was like, yep, have at it. Go ahead. I know
go for it.
she's a half an inch tall, tall enough to ride it. And it was one of those things where we would watch it at home. And I would, hype her up about it because I thought she would love it. She had also never been on a roller coaster before, so I could have been totally wrong. Totally wrong.
You don't know.
Could have know how that goes. So we kind of hyped her up about it and showed her all the videos. And up until literally we were like walking in the queue of Seven Dwarfs, she was like, I don't know. I'm not sure. And we're like, you're going to love it. I want you to try it once. And if you never want to ride it again, you don't ever have to ride it again. And it's helpful. We also kind of have that policy with like trying new foods and doing new things at home. So like similar policy. But she absolutely loved it. She just screamed and giggled and just had the time of her life on that ride. So then by the time we got to Slinky Dog, because we went to Magic Kingdom first and then went to Hollywood Studios, by the time we got to Slinky Dog, she was like, yes, let's do it. I'm ready.
I love that.
It was fun to see kind of that flip that she had. But yeah, she absolutely loved it. It made us laugh hearing her laugh on that roller coaster. And now my oldest, this next trip, his big thing that he wants to do is he really wants to ride Rock and Roller Coaster. So we'll see.
Ooh.
He's like just at the height and he's never gone upside down. So
oh my gosh. That one's an experience.
Yeah. We will see how this goes. I still am on the fence, but I may have to take your advice and just kind of let him experience it and then go from there. So
we'll decide real quick if they like it or not.
Right. So. Right. I just really don't want to like totally traumatize him and ruin his whole day and ruin his trip. Yeah. But that's our Hollywood Studios day is towards the end of our trip. I actually think it's our last. Yeah, it's our last day. So maybe if I just schedule it strategically in our day so that way whatever we're going on next is what he really wants to do. Maybe that will help just in case.
Yes, that's smart. Yeah, because then you have something. You're like, well, we're going to go do this. So it'll be great.
Right, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's also... Go ahead.
I was going to say, and it's so funny because, like, you never know what their favorite rides are going to be. You never know what they're going to love and what they're going to hate kind of until you go. Unless you're someone who goes to theme parks consistently and has taken, kids places. It's really hard to figure out what kind of rides your kids might want to do. So I think your advice is spot on. Just preparing them and kind of pushing them when they needed pushed a little bit, and then also kind of just respecting their space.
Yeah, I think we know our kids as moms, and we know what they can handle somewhat, versus what they might not be able to, especially when they're really little. Like I think you can usually judge that. Yeah. And I think
sorry, my dogs are barking.
Yeah, I think, another thing is that people are talking about being motion sick and things on here. I think that's also something to consider. If your child gets very, very car sick or air sick, consider that for some of these rides, because there are ones. I know some people are also very sensitive to the 3D film like they use in Star Tours and Ratatouille. I have a friend who gets massive migraines from those, so she can't wear the glasses. She has to not wear them. So, there's some things you just can't anticipate. And I always say with travel with kids, the things you remember, it never goes as you plan. But the things you remember are never what you expect to remember either. And it's always fun and always amazing. And the memories you come back with you're like, I'm really glad we did that. And I can't believe that ended up being the thing that we remember, but here it is. And, but I think that's, I think you just got to go and just do it and experience and encourage your kids to be brave, but also respect their little bodies and what they need.
Yeah. Well, and to piggyback on that you never know, like I said, what their favorites are going to be and what they come back with loving and hating. It's always something. Like I told you about, my daughter loved the carousel for the longest time. And that was just never something that was even on my radar as something that she would love that much. I mean, I knew it was something that she would enjoy, but I never anticipated it being that big of a deal.
Right. Well, and okay, so this leads really well into our next discussion. Our final thing for this evening, and before we maybe take a few Q&A, is we asked our kids, what is your favorite ride? Because we thought this would be interesting considering they're all kind of different ages. And I will say that I'll just do one of my kids. Maybe we'll bounce back and forth here.
Perfect.
But my youngest, I asked her what her favorite ride is, and she said jumping jellyfish. And I was like, "Are you my daughter?" Like, what? I didn't say it out loud. I would never say that. I was like, "Oh, okay."
Right. Like,
I was like, "Is there any others?" You said there. For those of you who don't know, jumping jellyfish is a ride in California Adventure that to me is like one of the rides that Walt would have rolled his eyes at because it was very like typical kind of midway. It like you sit in a thing and it kind of brings you up and then it kind of drops you really gently down and brings you up. It's fine. But
fine.
She loved it. But she did say Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, like I had mentioned. Like she now really loves that too. So I was like, okay, but I never, ever would have picked jumping jellyfish for her answer for that. Ever. Like, never.
Right. Never in 1,000 years would you have thought that that would be the answer.
No. But, it's okay that she likes that. It's fine. Her dad can go on it with her.
I love that. Well, so my youngest, if we're kind of popping back and forth here, my youngest kiddo, the one who I thought for sure she was going to say the carousel because of that whole story that I said. But she went with Little Mermaid, which totally makes sense because that is her absolute favorite princess and has been since forever. So she actually did surprise me because I didn't think that she was going to say that answer. So she went with one that I should have figured out and just didn't even think of. And it's such a fun ride, so I don't blame her for that. It's a great storytelling ride.
It really is. It's so colorful and fun, and it's got all the music, so you can sing along. And you don't have to wait very long for it most of the time. So
which is
that, right?
Helpful, which is very helpful when it's one of those rides that it's like, yep, let's go on. It's a 5-minute wait. Let's do it.
I know she'd be disappointed with the one in California Adventure because we don't have that beautiful queue with all the water that's reminiscent of the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
She could live in that queue all day at Disney World.
Yeah.
She hops between all of the shells and everything in the rocks to the point where I'm like, come on, let's go. We can go on the ride now. And she's like, but Mom, did you see this? I feel like get along with her very well. She loves the rocks and all of the details.
Oh, someday I hope to get to meet her. We'll talk about rocks all day. Yes, it'll be great.
Yes. Anything with seashells and rocks and pretty things, she's all for it. So
she probably loves the concrete too.
Yeah,
does she watch the stuff that's embedded in the concrete?
Yep, and in the floor, she's like crawling. I'm like, girl, come on, can we just go, please? Telling all the people like, just go on. It's okay. Go ahead.
Oh gosh. So my middle child, my daughter, who is 9, almost 10, what did she say? She said Autopia. Now, it's so funny because I hear so many people rag on Autopia is like Tomorrowland Speedway for those of you who do Disney World. I hear so many people say that ride needs to be taken down. I do agree that the cars really could be updated to like more environmentally friendly ones, as long as they kept the Bob Gurr shape. They don't mess with Bob Gurr, but she loves it. And I said, okay, why? I was like, why do you love that? And she's like, where else do kids get to drive, Mom? It's like, fair.
Very valid.
It was, the Autopia rides were the most popular Disneyland rides when Disney opened, besides the Mark Twain and Autopia, because kids and they didn't have guardrails back then, mind you. No guardrails, but they did have police cars that would like pull you over for speeding.
Oh
which
my gosh. That's amazing.
But yeah, and they just wanted to go on Autopia like all the time when I was there because they just want to drive. I get it. I wanted to drive back then too. So
yeah,
around that age, Autopia is great. My daughter, who's 7, also loves Autopia, but she didn't list it as her favorite. So,
Yeah. But
how about your other kiddo?
very valid point with that kiddos getting to drive. That's very true.
Yeah.
So my oldest kiddo who just turned 6, when I asked him, I really wasn't sure what kind of an answer I was going to get. For a while, Small World was his favorite because after his first trip, that was the only ride he remembered. And he came home singing the song constantly. And he was not even 2 yet. So if you can imagine that, which was, I was here for it. I was here for it. So he has made me love that ride. He also loved Slinky Dog as one of his favorite because that was like his first big kid roller coaster. So when I asked him, I was curious to see what he was going to say, but his answer was Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, which was not a surprise because like I told you guys earlier, he has loved Mickey from the time he was old enough to even recognize what Mickey was and who Mickey was. And even still being 6 years old, he begs to watch Mickey Mouse stuff all the time. So I think it's it's very sweet to hear him say that just because, that shows how much he really just loves Mickey, which just like makes me so happy.
That's so great.
Yeah.
Hope he never loses that.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm like, I really hope that was one of my fears. Like, okay, mom moment here for a minute. That was one of my fears putting him in public school because I homeschooled him for kindergarten and putting him in public school. I'm like, I don't want the other kids to make him lose his love for all the Disney things that he loves so much. So I'm hoping. Okay, I know my dog is like driving me crazy. Sorry, mom moment again for the fur babies. But I was like, I really hope. You're messing up my camera. I really hope that he doesn't lose that either. So I'm hopeful. Okay, I don't go lay down.
Yeah, I think their taste definitely changed so much as they get older, but some things, I think some kids, there's some things they always like. My son, who I asked him what his favorite ride was, and he said, Mom, you already know that, like, because he's 12, so he's just like rolled his eyes at me. And I'm like, okay, put on my patience hat, and I continued the conversation, and he's like, his favorite ride is Space Mountain, and it has been ever since he's been able to go on it. But my kid loves space. Space is like his thing. I think he wants to be an astronaut. He wants to go to Mars. That's his thing. So flight and space and anything has to do with that. So it's not a surprise. Like I remember when he was a lot smaller, we would put on the Space Mountain music because in Disneyland, there's a soundtrack to the ride that you listen to while you go through it. And I think it's Michael Giacchino that made that.
That sounds right.
I'd have to look it up. But anyway, so we would put on the soundtrack in the car, and there's this time when it takes a lot slower to kind of take off than the Disney World version. And so whenever I'd go to a freeway on-ramp, I would put on that soundtrack and try to time it just right. So when I'd speed up to get on the freeway, it was like Space Mountain was starting.
Oh, that's perfect. I love that so much.
And my kids would just like squeal in the back, and I wasn't breaking any laws. I was just going at like 60, I wasn't going the speed limit. But and he has always loved it. And he likes the Disneyland version way better because it has the music than the Disney World, and it's a smoother ride. The one in Disney World really beats you up a lot. Like the Matterhorn, they're very similar in tracks, I think. But so he said that, and then he also said the Incredicoaster, no surprise there. And I think pretty much anything that's a thrill ride except for Tower of Terror. He doesn't like the drops, but he loves the roller coasters, and that's pretty age appropriate for 12-year-old boy. So not surprised totally there.
Makes sense. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I will tell a quick soundtrack story that you just reminded me of with my kiddos before we maybe take some Q&A, if that sounds good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kate? Okay. So you're talking about soundtracks. One of my favorite rides is Soarin' in Epcot. And my kiddos both know that it's like one of my absolute favorite rides that I've ever been on. And so one of the things in our rotation that we listen to quite frequently is the Soarin' soundtrack. And it's gotten to the point now where my son, who I swear he's got a like he remembers things that he like has seen, whatever. I can't think of the word.
I can't either.
Okay. You guys know what I mean. It's fine. But he just he just remembers everything that he's seen. And it's gotten to the point now where we've watched the point of view. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Photographic memory. Thank you, Ashley. So we've watched The Point of View enough. We've been on it enough now to the point where he can listen to the soundtrack and tell you what scene we're on. So he can tell you exactly where we are in the ride because
I love
he
that.
knows it's my favorite. And it's just so sweet because he's like, Mom, at this part, do you remember? This is where we get to see the elephants. And at this next part, do you remember? This is where we see. And he also, when I homeschooled him last year, I taught him more about like the different places around the world where you visit on in the Soarin' Around the World version. And so, he'll do little quizzes with me about like, okay, do you remember where this is? Oh yeah, that's the Taj Mahal. Do you remember where it is? Yeah, that's in India. So like, there's more to it than that, but it's just one of those things that like he loves that music because he knows how much I love it, which is just so sweet. So he will literally narrate it for me like at least 50% of the time when it comes on.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
Well, and
it's
I
very,
feel
very
like
sweet.
Disney music, like, I love how we just, as Disney moms, incorporate it into our kids' lives. Like, one of the songs, I kind of rotate my girls' songs at night, but they almost always ask for Second Star to the Right. So I always sing that for them before bed. And I love that it just kind of like, it creates so much happiness,
Yeah.
in your home, especially when everybody is having a bad day. You put on some Disney music and suddenly everybody is smiling or singing or just having more peace in your home. So
Yeah, and that was one of the
I
things
love
we
that.
implemented during the quarantine when we were all kind of stuck at home, uh, along with watching a lot of Disney videos. Was we created playlists for my kids that were all Disney music, but I also went as far to add like parade music and fireworks music and all that kind of stuff. So, but it's also fun because then we go to Disney and we see, character cavalcades, or we see, the dance party parades and all that kind of stuff. And they know the music. So like it's so fun for
It's
them
so
because they
special.
can sing along while they're looking at their favorite characters. So it's just one of those things that, yeah. And, Kate, you and I are both very big musical people and, musically inclined. And our
What are you
husbands are
talking
both
about?
involved in music and we're both music. You know what I mean? So it's like one of those things that, yeah, my kids also have Disney music as their lullabies. And, it's just part of who we are.
It's part of the magic,
It
the Disney
is. It
mom
is.
magic. I love that.
Oh, Kirk wants to know if you're going to sing us to sleep to finish off the show tonight.
Uh,
Maybe not tonight, but maybe that's something we can work on.
I'll tell you what, when we hit 1,000 followers on our Mom Street account, Mom Street USA, I will sing Second Star to the Right for you all.
Perfect. I love it. I love
I'll have
it.
to warm up in advance.
I love it.
Ginge also says he makes breakfast with the Jungle Cruise music loop. I love the Jungle Cruise
That's
music. It's
awesome.
my ringtone, so
Yeah.
I'm on
There's
board with
so
that.
much good Disney music. It's hard to pick, but there's just so much good stuff.
So, do we want to take a few Q&A, do some Q&A before we...
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So our plan for our shows will be at the end of every show. This one went a little bit longer probably than what we typically will chat. But we just kind of wanted to give you guys some insight on us and our families and all that kind of stuff. But typically we will leave a good amount of time at the end of our shows because we want to hear from you. We want to answer questions you may have. In today's show, you may not have a ton. You may just want to chime in and put some comments in that we're happy to read. But we want to give you guys a chance to kind of be active participants in our show. So if you guys have questions or anything that you guys want to pop in our chats, we can't see each other's, but we will relay information kind of as we see it come up.
I did see a question earlier. Kathy asked, if you can't go to Disney a lot, what do you think is the best age to go? And I did see lots of people answer in the chat. Thank you all for chiming in there because this really is a community. So you guys can absolutely answer other people's questions too and chime in your answers. But I mean, I kind of agree with everyone who said like any age is a great age to go. It's whenever you can go, because they're all magical in their own ways. There's a lot of people that say the Disney parks were built for like age like 9 to 10 is like a great time, and I'd say I agree that's a nice time, but it's also really magical with a 2 year old. It's magical. I don't know whether you're teenagers. I've like that's a question mark. I'm sure it is, but but I mean it's magical with your 6 year old. It's magical with your baby. It's like it's just they're different trips, all of them, and they're very
Yeah.
different experiences. And like the things my kids loved at 2, they don't love necessarily at 8. You know, you see the parks completely differently through their eyes. So I agree. Anytime you can get to Disney is a great age to go.
Yes, absolutely. Kate, I've got one for you. What is a good rope drop ride at Disneyland or California Adventure?
Oh yeah, that's a great one. If you're in Disneyland, especially if you got littles, rope drop Fantasyland. Beeline to Fantasyland, and don't do Peter Pan first necessarily. Do I would say like Alice and Dumbo, and maybe Snow White, and then Peter Pan. The other ones, the Carousel, Pinocchio, and the teacups, they don't have as long as lines, but oh, and Storybookland Canal Boats and Casey Jr. Like all of those rides that are in Fantasyland, they are very slow loading rides, and a lot of them have lines in the sun. So they are going to have massive lines throughout the whole day until very, very late at night when your kids are probably falling apart. So rope drop Fantasyland for sure. And if you are not willing to pay an individual Lightning Lane $15 per person per ride for Radiator Springs Racers, that's my recommended rope drop for that. If you can't rope drop Radiator Springs Racers, do it very close to the end of the night when the parks close and nobody else can pop in that individual Lightning Lane after you, because I waited in a line for almost 3 hours that kept growing. The wait time kept growing. We didn't move. We moved like a foot every 15 minutes.
Oh.
Um, that line is awful for that. Another one you could rope drop at California Adventure would be Web Slingers, especially if you have littles that don't want to go on Radiator Springs Racers. Web Slingers is great for pretty much all ages, because I'm trying to remember their height requirement, but it's very low because little kids can go on that one, and it's really fun. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like Midway Mania. So those are my recommendations. Yes.
Let me see.
Did you have any recommendations on which age to go? I know I gave my answer.
I think what you said was spot on. That's exactly what I would say too. Every age can be magical for various different reasons. So I think it's and not only that, but under 3 is free. So like, why not take them when they're little? Yes, they may not be able to do everything, but so much of Disney is still available for those littles to do. So I definitely agree with what you said.
Okay, I had a question. Do any of our kids like the submarine ride? And honestly, we forgot to go on it. Forgot.
Oopsie.
Whoops. I get really claustrophobic on that ride, but there is a spot you can look at what's in the ride things without going in the submarines. For those of you who just can't do it, they have like a secret room, but you can sit in and see the ride at Disneyland. So I don't know. They all wanted to go on it, and we just ran out of time.
And we'll leave it at that.
Maybe next time. Gotta leave something for later.
Right. I had a question way earlier in the chat, and I forget who asked it. I just remembered. We're wondering, when we were talking about favorite rides, if my kids love Winnie the Pooh like I do. Yes, they do. That is one that we always make sure to go on. My oldest had a very strong Winnie the Pooh phase where his room was Pooh Bear for a while. So that's definitely something that we go on together. And I'm super excited to go on that with my father-in-law, because that is his absolute favorite. So I'm like, that's just like from his childhood. That's literally the only thing that he was like, is there Pooh Bear stuff there? I'm like, yes, we will make sure we go. Yes.
My gosh, I can't go on the one in Disney World without hearing Kirk's voice in my head about how much he wishes it was Mr. Toad. So like, it's
I'm just gonna say no comment and move on, because I can't.
But just every time I hear it, I'm like, well, and then in Disneyland, it was Country Bear Jamboree before it got converted, and so the place in the Heffalumps and Woozles room where the I think it's Winnie the Pooh. There's this thing that goes up and down in the center. That's where it's not Trixie. It's the other one. The one that descends on the swing from Country Bears.
Yeah, yeah,
They
yeah.
use the same mechanism for that. They just repurposed it. And
Oh,
then they
that's
also have
funny.
their three heads of the, stuffed animals that are on the wall. They're still in the ride. If you look up right when you go into the honey room, if you look back behind you, you can still see them up on the wall. So still
Oh,
remnants from Country
yeah.
Bears. Sorry, there's probably more information than you needed. I just can't stop myself.
No, hey, it's okay. We love it. You know, we all love it. We all love it. I've got a good one here. How would you help your kids overcome fears of rides that they had been scared of in the past?
That's a great question.
That's
You
a
want to go
really good
first?
one. I think, again, just talking to them about it is really all that you can do. And like Kate said, sometimes you just got to give them space and let them decide on their own. And other times you've got to just kind of give them a little nudge, and whatever that looks like in your family, as far as oh, maybe you get to ride with dad on this ride when you've been riding with mom the rest of the time, or you get to pick out a special little trinket, or you get a little celebration button because you rode the ride for the first time, again, or whatever that may be. But just prepping them ahead of time, I think, is still just my number one advice for that.
Yeah, I've used a lot of bribery. I'm not gonna lie, but only when I thought they could handle it. Never when
Yeah.
I didn't think they could. And so I think we used popsicles a lot because I'm
That's a
probably
good
gonna
one.
buy them a popsicle anyway or a Mickey
Yeah.
bar. And so it's just like, well, we'll just ride this and then get our popsicle. And then in their brain, they're thinking about their popsicle and they don't think quite as much about it. And I also talk about how the last time you were here, you were little, so my kids have gone multiple times. I'm like, you were like a whole year younger. I'm like, look at how tall you are now and how
Yeah.
big you are. You're a big kid, we talk about how when your body grows and you're bigger, you've experienced rides in different ways and you don't feel it the
Mm,
same way you did before. And them having that knowledge of, okay, like I am bigger. And we like to use the phrase, I got this from someone named Mandy Arioto, who is a big supporter of moms, but she uses this phrase with her kids, and I always use it with mine. And we did it when we were hiking in Bryce Canyon and going everywhere. And I said, "You are brave and you have strong bones." And I say that to my kids all the time. And I'm like, "You are brave and you have strong bones." And I just speak those words over them. So then in their head, they're like, "I am brave." And I'm like, I have strong bones. I can do this, right? And get those words in their heads that they are capable of more than maybe they think they are. All those positive words you can put in their head of this, they can do this. And but of course I would never push them to do it if they were really uncomfortable. So know where that line is. I would
yeah, for
encourage
sure.
that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You only have fun when you're brave. I love that, Kurt. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are brave and you have strong bones. People are asking about the quote.
I love that.
Um,
Oh, Christina said, my friend used to say, Mickey would never hurt you. Oh, that's cute.
yeah, we say that a lot too. Especially now that my kids are older and I don't have to hide the magic quite as much. I can tell them how the mechanisms work. Because they all know they're in on the secrets. They can't tell little kids how anything works. We say
Yeah.
that you're creating magic for the little, so you can't tell them. So they know how things work. And sometimes just understanding how something operates also relieves some of that anxiety, so they don't feel so nervous.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I've got lots of other things. Yeah, people saying in here, yeah, Ashley, you can do hard things. Yeah, absolutely. Just words of encouragement to the kiddos for sure. Really nice.
Someone asked where we got our ears.
So mine were gifted to me by the wonderful Jazzy.
Oh, that's
Pocket
right. I
Fam
remember that.
knows. Yeah. So, but they were released, I think, literally one day right around the 50th anniversary of Walt Disney World, when all of that merch came out, and then they were gone and they disappeared. And Jazzy was so, so sweet. She had an extra pair and she gifted them to me on my last trip. And I may have cried because I was so excited because I'd never wanted a pair of ears so badly in my life. And she was just like, here you go. And I was like, thank you.
That's so
So
sweet.
she is just so wonderful. And I love her for forever for that.
Do they light up? People are asking. Can you
They
turn them
do,
on?
although I was charging them and I don't think, yeah, I didn't charge them enough. And I also think my button may be a little faulty, so I gotta mess with it and finagle
Oh
it because I
man,
was trying to turn them on earlier and they were not turning on. So,
bummer.
I
Yeah,
know.
my ears, these actually do belong to my daughter from when that solo trip I took her on in 2018, 2019. I think it's 2019. Anyway, it was a while ago. We bought these in Disneyland, and these are technically hers, but she lets me borrow them because she likes it and that I use them on live. So taking a
That's
little
cute.
piece of my daughter with me. Yes.
I love it. I've got some people in here dropping in suggestions of like, would love to hear you talk about. So let me see what this. Yeah,
I'm gonna go
Blair.
get
So
my
that
notes
is
out.
something we are going to talk about. Blair had mentioned talking about baby and nursing rooms at the parks. That is on our list of things that we already are going to talk about. So just to kind of give you guys an overview of what's coming up, we are planning on literally dissecting trips from the planning process all the way through execution, and kind of talking about what it is that parents need to know, need to remember, all that kind of stuff. So our next show coming up is going to be all about trip prep. How to plan, what to pack, how to pack park bags, diaper bags, strollers, all of that kind of is the plan for next week. And then from there, we're going to talk about, getting there, what kind of resorts there are, literally everything from top to bottom. So yes, please put these ideas in here. If you guys have ideas of things you want to be covered, we do have a channel on the Walrus Carp Discord. Again, that link is in both of our bios that you can find, and there is a Mom Street USA channel on there that you guys can put these suggestions in. One, so they don't get lost, and so we make sure that we see them, and two, so that way we make sure that we insert whatever questions or things that information that you're looking for into those episodes. Because someone else had talked about differences in PhotoPass systems and how that kind of works. Those types of things we can definitely hit on as we talk about the different parks and things like that. So that is definitely something that we are going to be utilizing, is that channel, to make sure that you guys are getting the information that you need for your trips.
Absolutely. And yeah, we absolutely want this to be an interactive show with you guys. We want to hear what it is that you want to hear so that we can share not only our tips, but you guys share tips that we can share on here on the Discord. Like we'll take some of those suggestions that we think are brilliant and we'll share them with other moms. This is not just me and Jackie. This is all of us all together. And I somebody did ask something. Sorry, I was just looking for
No,
it.
you're fine.
Oh, Becca was asking, maybe talking about what if you have kids who don't want to ride the rides. We had mentioned a little bit about that, about like baby swap earlier, that you can do, you can trade off if they, so it's not just if they're too small to ride, but also if they're scared to ride. That Disney understands that. They don't ever force like, you're tall enough, get on there. So
Right.
they absolutely understand. And also if there's your kids really don't want to ride the rides and you're like, I don't have time for baby swap or we don't want to mess with that, like sometimes you just accept that this is a trip where maybe you just don't go on something and that's okay. And I think you'll find that the things you do get to do at Disney, maybe you find something new that you never knew you would love, a show that you'd never seen before, or just sitting on Main Street enjoying a snack together. There's other really magical memories you can make that are not just going on rides. And I think those are really valuable too. So
Absolutely. And it's so hard on these trips. You feel like you need to get everything done in every park in every area, and especially when traveling with kids, you've just kind of got to accept that it's probably not going to happen.
yeah.
You'll hear people who do the parks a lot talk about this, and it's just all about your priority list. You've got to set that list and get that done, and then anything after that you just treat as a bonus. And we've approached it that way with our kiddos. I always ask them, okay, what's the one ride at Magic Kingdom, or wherever we're going, that is like, I have to do this ride when we're there. And so then I make the list of what their top choices are. And I do it with my husband and I too. So all four of us will usually pick a ride, and it's like, okay, that's our top four priorities right there, is whatever rides the four of us pick. So that way it helps the kiddo feel like they've been heard, It helps the kiddo feel like they can help plan and help make those decisions. And it gets them on their favorite ride. So
Yeah.
it's a win-win situation no matter what. So I think really just making that priority list and then just explaining to your kids like, hey, this is a really big place and there's lots of really fun things to do. So we're going to try to get in as many as we can, but we're probably not going to get to everything. Like my kids will tell you forever that on our last Epcot trip this last year, we ran out of time to go on Three Caballeros, and that is one of all of our rides that we just love,
Aw.
but it wasn't in our top priority list, and we
Mm.
just ran out of time. And so now going this next trip, I asked my kids, okay, when we go to Epcot, what do you want to ride? And my son goes, Three Caballeros. I said, okay. Since we missed it on last trip, we will for sure get it on this trip. So it's just, one of those things that, hopefully you have another trip down the line that you can, make up for anything that you didn't get to do. But if not, just that expectation is set for your kids so they understand that you're going to get to as much as you can, but it probably won't be everything.
Yeah, what we did, I remember we were sitting in Zion National Park actually doing some planning, and I was sitting and I was like, okay, I pulled out my notes on my phone and I said, everybody gets to pick 2 rides because we're going to 2 parks, like 2 rides and 1 food item that you want to eat. Because like food's really big for my husband. Like he said to me, because we're headed to Disney World, like I think a little end of next week. So he's like, I always forget to eat when I go. I literally just don't eat all day. And then I'm really hungry at the end of the night in my hotel and I'm kicking myself. And I told him, I was like, yeah, I'm like, I know I'm going to prioritize food for you because I know it's important to you. And he's like, if we don't eat, I'm not going. I was like, duly noted. Okay. So I was like, okay, let's prioritize food. So we did 2 rides and 1 food item. And, every day my kids would ask me, Mom, like, how are we doing on the list for everybody? Because they wanted to make sure everybody got all what they needed. And we did.
So
We got green checks next to all the things for everybody. We didn't get to everything in the parks, but we got to everything everybody wanted to eat and do. And I think that really is the way to do it, to make sure that they also have that expectation of like, they don't have that anxiety of like, when are we going to go on my ride? Because they know we will get to it eventually because it's on the list.
Right.
So,
and I will say we are both fortunate enough that we've been several times with our kids. So our kids are pretty familiar with kind of what's around. But, if you're not in that boat, that's where point of view videos are really important. And also just your knowledge of your kiddo. My daughter loving Little Mermaid, my daughter loving Frozen. We can't not go on the Frozen ride in Epcot. So like, it's one of those things that if they don't know what to pick, you can help them pick. Like, what they're going to like, what characters, what movies, what songs, whatever it may be that they're going to enjoy. It could be a show, it could be fireworks, it could be a parade, it could be a ride. You never know. But I think just giving them that ability to choose does help. And like you said, it eases kind of that anxiety over like, well, can we please do this? Like, yep, you already know it's on the list. You don't even have to ask. It's gonna be done.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're running a little bit over on time, so maybe I have one last little tip before we maybe wrap things up, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Talking about planning, and we'll talk more next week about planning and prepping, and I'll probably show these again because not everybody's here. But I have these. These are really great books on Amazon. That I got for my kids, and they have them for almost all of the parks. Like this is the Disneyland one.
Oh, those are great.
They have some more for the Disney World parks, but they really are fantastic. Not only do they have like trivia and things, but for each ride, they have like each of the lands. It's color coded for each of the lands, and they have each ride, and it will say rate this attraction like never again, not so hot, pretty cool, way cool, awesome, or my favorite. Or and you can give a like. So for older kids, this is great for fill out. For littles, you can read some of the stuff to them. It gives you tells you what the ride's about.
Well, that's
and
cool.
So they're fabulous books. Yeah. They're a little bit on the spendy side. So I always get anxious on my kids. That's why they're in here now, because my kids would just beat them up. I was like, right. No. So, but they've got
nice.
It's so well done. They even have some history and secrets. They've got maps of things that are really kid friendly. So these are definitely one of my favorite resources for prepping your kids to get them excited about the parks and get familiar with them if they don't know much about them. So
very cool. Yeah, that's helpful. That's absolutely helpful.
So we already talked about what's coming next week. So we're talking about trip prep. So we're going to kind of start at home before we head to the parks. And after that, I know we're going to do some talking about, I think we're going to have a guest for 1 week while I'm in Disney World to
Yes.
be announced.
Yes. We're got a few things in the works that we're gonna hopefully have some answers soon. But yeah, we've got a couple weeks where Kate's gonna be in Disney World, and then about a month later, I'm gonna be in Disney World. So we're gonna have some guests on those episodes for sure. But lots of good things planned. And for our episode next week, as I mentioned earlier, if there's something specifically that you'd like answered for trip prep, so packing, what to bring, how to pack it, all of that type of information, pop your question into the Discord channel. Again, links are in our bios. So that way we can make sure that you are getting the information that is going to be most helpful to you. It's one thing for us to sit here on Thursday nights and just talk to each other about stuff, but it's another to make sure that you guys are actually getting information that's helpful to you. Yeah. It's like Kate said earlier, this show is kind of for all of us. It's not just here, let's throw all this information at you. It's okay, tell us what you need to know, and we want to help you, have a better trip by giving you all of our insight and, insight from everyone in the community as well.
Absolutely. And so, also, if you have not yet followed Jackie, Wishes Mama, me, Disney Cicerone, and of course, Mom Street USA, please give those a follow. And if we hit 1,000 on Mom Street USA, I will sing Second Star to the Right. Now I'm kind of wishing I didn't say that, but it's okay.
Maybe we can make it a duet. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
It'll be fine. I'll sing Second Star to the Right, and you can play something for us on whatever instrument of your choice. How about that?
I love it. We'll figure it out. So to find that information, the link to all of our Mom Street USA stuff is also in my bio. Kate, did you get it in your bio as well?
Yep, it's in my bio.
So it is actually the first link when you hit the little link in my bio. It is the first option there. Will take you to all of the links for all of the different social media. But yeah, we would appreciate your guys' support over there. You guys are already supporting us so much by just being here with us and hyping us up and being so excited with us. So we are so, so grateful for you guys. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. And if you know of anyone who couldn't make it, or if you missed part of it, the episodes will be archived. So Kate is going to take them and turn them into podcasts. And one of us, or we'll figure out how to put them on YouTube, and we'll be posting some little clips and things on our social media accounts as well. So definitely give all of those a follow so you guys don't miss out on any of the information that we will hopefully be providing to help you with your next trip.
Yeah, and we'll definitely put, whenever we post the YouTube or the podcast, we'll put it in that Discord channel. We'll link it there. But you can also search, you'll be able to search for Mom Street USA. That's just our handle virtually everywhere. So yes. We know moms are really busy, so we wanted to provide a place where you could go back and listen to this information whenever if you missed it, or whenever it's relevant to you when you're planning a trip. So it'll be there for you.
Absolutely.
So I think that's it. I think we did it.
That's it.
First episode.
Check the green box for our
check
first,
the green box.
Our first episode.
We're list checkers, I could tell. So I think we would. That's great.
Thank you guys all so much in our chat. I've got lots of people over here saying thank you. This was great. We loved it. Thank you guys. We like I said, we really, really appreciate you.
Absolutely. And over here, same. There's so many people saying that. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us for Mom Street USA. This has something we've been dreaming about for a little while now, and to really see it come to fruition is such a joy. For I think, if I'm speaking for both me and Jackie, I think this is a joy to build this community with you guys and provide a place for moms and parents alike to just experience the parks in a more magical way. So thank you for being with us, and we will work on not going over next week so we have a little shorter show for you. Hopefully. But we like sharing stories about our kids because we're moms. So yeah, can you blame us? So all right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we will see you next week on Thursday.
Bye, guys.
Have a great night, everyone.